It is my utmost pleasure to welcome a dear friend of the Zero Project, Ambassador Richard SADLEIR.
Well, thank you very much, Tim, and thank you very much, Kathryn. My secret is that I always wanted to be an academic, so I'm honored to sit next to you. So.
Dr. Ambassador.
Well, dear colleagues, dear attendees, for me it is a real honor and a privilege to be here. I wanted to say thank you to the organizers of the Zero Project Conference and to all the participants for coming together to collaborate on and work with determination towards a world where there are no barriers to persons with disabilities and their families, for a world with zero barriers, zero walls, zero limits. This conference is a great opportunity to network, collaborate, and amplify local experience, strategy, and solutions at a global level. It is a powerful network. It creates powerful networks. These are the sort of networks, the civil society networks, which working with governments, driving governments, working with diplomats and international civil servants, produced milestones like the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. We all have a role to play in encouraging governments and peoples to sign and to genuinely implement key conventions like the Disability Rights Convention. We all have a role to play in striving for inclusion for all. I care deeply about this, both as an Australian diplomat and as the father of a teenager with a disability, with Down syndrome. Because of this, I'm delighted and pleased to be one part, just one part of a Zero Project initiative. The Ambassador Circle, which is working here in Vienna to advance disability inclusion using diplomatic network and what influence we can wield and what influence we can bear to try and achieve the sort of things that Kathryn has so eloquently outlined for us. I know with the Zero Project and my colleagues, we would welcome ideas as to how we can do this more effectively and with more impact. And we would always appreciate hearing from you about this, whether it's in sessions like this or feel free to reach out to us. I'm conscious that time is very short, but as an Australian diplomat, it would be remiss of me if I did not mention briefly the efforts that Australia makes in its diplomacy to try and advance disability inclusion and to try and achieve the sort of things that Kathryn has outlined. Australia is committed to removing barriers to inclusion, both at home and internationally. We strive to ensure our commitments are matched by action. Kathryn's point about walking the talk. My own Australian Department of Foreign Affairs and Trade recognises its important responsibility to reflect, represent, and advocate for Australia's diversity. This includes all persons with disabilities and their communities and families. I'm proud that Australian Rosemary Kalis was re-elected to the UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities in June last year and continues to advance that committee's vital work. In Australia's diplomacy, advancing disability inclusion is a cross-cutting priority. It's reflected in our development programs, our humanitarian efforts, our multilateral engagement, and our human rights advocacy. By way of a small example, I have the honour of being Australia's ambassador to Bosnia and Herzegovina, where our embassy's direct aid program supports local NGOs providing training, education, and social inclusion opportunities for young persons with disabilities. My diplomatic colleagues throughout the world are working to undertake similar projects and support similar projects. Very conscious of the time, I'll leave my comments on Australia there. But I'm delighted, I'm absolutely delighted to be sitting next to Simon Green. I'm very conscious that during the opening session of this conference, the point was made that it is vital to hear all voices and that the youth, the young, have different and fresh perspectives, different tools and different challenges, and their voices should be very loud ones in every conference. I'm thus really, really pleased to welcome and to pass to a fellow Australian from the great state of Victoria, Simon Green, who is the Program Coordinator for the Youth Disability Advisory Services in Victoria, Australia, a very innovative and highly capable service with fresh ideas and perspectives. Simon will provide us with some great insights into the importance of engaging young people with disabilities in international affairs. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you very much, Ambassador. Hello, my name is Simon. I'll sign it in Auslan, slightly different, S-I-M-O-N, 2 hands, so one-handed. I can always spot, American sign. I use he, him pronouns. I am a white man who's nearly 40 with a big brown beard, shaved head, wearing a purple flannel shirt, and I have a chronic illness called cystic fibrosis. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land that I live and grew up on in Australia, the Bunurong and Wurundjeri nations, and pay respect to their elders who've cared for the country for tens of thousands of years. So I work for Youth Disability Advocacy Service, part of Youth Affairs Council Victoria, and I'm here because our leadership program for disabled young people won a prestigious Zero Project Award, for which I will be eternally grateful. Now, I am a diplomatic neophyte, but when I was thinking what I could offer you fine people who are very skilled and knowledgeable in disability and access, I realized I need to talk about our youth. So first, I need you all to know that young disabled people are quakingly passionate about the issues that affect us globally. Climate change is enormous to them. They're already grappling with the future they inherited. They know that our mistakes are coming to bite them. Mental health is also huge in the minds of young Australians. We've had 2 royal commissions recently, one about mental health and one about people with disability. In both of those, when given the chance, our young people gave a huge amount of ideas, recommendations, change, and outcomes that they want to see. Our Young Leaders Program graduates all advocate on different levels of government on a whole range of issues they care deeply about. That includes the rights of LGBTIQA+, migrant and refugee, and Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities. They're vociferous on the need for intersectionality, and they go to great personal lengths to live those values. Young people join our youth parliament, where they take bills through the democratic process. We have a young leader who joined a UN program focused on youth mental health and the development of community-based preventative action. Another young leader went to Northern Ireland and presented and facilitated with young workers in Derry on how to make their practice more inclusive and accessible. Yet another of our young leaders is president of UN Youth in Victoria, and they can name every single national flag by sight, and it is very breathtaking to behold. It's like a party trick. There's a common misconception, though, that young people aren't as engaged. People who say that just aren't looking hard enough. Disabled young people are fierce, passionate advocates for change, and we need to create or recreate the structures that enable participation. I'm no longer young, so when I think about the difference between a young person and an older person, the only thing I really think of is time. Older people have had more time on the planet. Those of us who have used our extra time to gain knowledge, experience, and most importantly, to make a copious amount of mistakes, we can share the mistake, we can offer, as older folks, we can offer disabled young people mentorship. We can share the mistakes we've made and what we've learned from them. We can offer them opportunities wherever possible. And most precious of all, once they've gained the confidence and preparation they need, we need to get out of their way. Young people have energy, they have optimism, they have hope. These are the things we older people can sometimes dismiss. We say, oh, it's been done before, that doesn't work. Ah, the idealism of youth. Do you remember being told that when you were a kid? Do you remember how furious it made you? We need to empower and encourage that energy and that hope and work together with our disabled young colleagues to convert that into change. We need new paths and new directions for the human species. And it's young people's role, it always has been, to take what we did in the past and change it, to make it better. So I want to urge us all to do all we can to get out of the way for that better world. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Simon. And I would like to just take this moment also to acknowledge our international sign language interpreters who are with us remotely and our American Sign Language interpreters in the room. Thank you for ensuring that we are able to have this event accessible, and we appreciate all you do. 3-day conference, long hours, it's not easy. So we see you and we appreciate you. With that being said, yes. With that being said, I would like to welcome the most distinguished Ambassador Jaideep MAZUMDAR, and would like to invite India to present its perspective on disability inclusion, both from the diplomatic side and from our civil society side.
Thank you very much, and like Richard, I'm delighted to share the stage with my diplomatic colleagues and with the representatives of all the wonderful organizations from the countries that they represent who are here today at this very meaningful event. Well, as you know, India has or will very soon be the largest population in the world. When we were in school, we would learn that India adds one Australia every year. But since then, Australia has itself grown, so we can't keep up. But by the last census, about 2.2% of India's total population had one form of disability or the other. And this is 30 million people. This is more than 3 times the entire population of Austria. So you can imagine the scale of the challenges and indeed of the opportunities for good work that this represents. So India was one of the first countries to ratify the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, much before it came into effect. The government of India has a whole department for the empowerment of persons with disabilities. We have adopted a rights-based approach to assisting persons with disabilities. We have legislation for free education for disabled children between the ages of 6 and 18, reservation of 5% seats in educational institutions run by the government and local governments. 4% of government jobs are reserved, and we have designated courts for cases of violation of rights of the disabled, and so on. The government has also launched a scheme for promoting research and development of service models and programs, assistive technology, and development of devices. Much like the Zero Project, we have a national award for the empowerment of persons with disabilities in areas such as creativity, in sports, the best state, the best district, and in applied research, as well as the most accessible website, because it is important that in addition to the real world, the digital space is made equally accessible to all. And it is civil society and NGOs that remain the most important pillar for the implementation of our national policy for persons with disabilities. Now, how can diplomacy help disability inclusion? As diplomats, on the one hand, our job is to promote good relations with other governments, to acquire investments and markets and technology. But on the other hand, it is also to share our culture, our cuisine, our movies, our ideas, and our experiences with the rest of the world. And because you have been listening so patiently so far, I will let you into a little secret. As diplomats, we are required to speak knowledgeably about almost everything under the sun, and sometimes beyond. The reality, though, is somewhat different, and our job is really to build links between people and organizations that really know what they are talking about, because they have a lot to share and they can benefit the many. And in the area of disability inclusion, this is essentially what the Zero Project is doing, by bringing you all together, and we as diplomats must take this forward. I am therefore delighted to hand over to Kavita from the Bapu Trust, one of the awardees of the Zero Project from India this year, and one of the foremost organizations engaged in mental health issues in India, to share with you their work and the insights that they have gained in addressing one of the most pervasive disabilities of our times. Over to you, Kavita. Yeah, sure. You have a microphone?
Thank you so much, sir. Honorable Chair, Ms. Kathryn Johnson, His Eminence Shri Mazumdar, sir, honorable and eminent panel members, ladies and gentlemen, I'm Kavita NAIR, board member with the Bapu Trust for Research on Mind and Discourse. I'm a 45-year-old Indian woman, have black hair, I'm wearing reading glasses, I'm wearing a red blouse with a black jacket and a grey woolen scarf. It is an honor for me to be speaking today with our ambassador to Austria, His Eminence Shri Jaideep MAZUMDAR. The Bapu Trust has been working in low-income communities for the past 23 years. We adopted the vision of psychosocial sustainability leading to caring communities. We have worked tirelessly to transform communities, urban, semi-urban, and rural, for inclusion of persons with disabilities. We have harnessed the strengths of the Indian indigenous, social, cultural, and community systems to plan for, as well as achieve, outcomes of well-being and inclusion for the most excluded groups of persons with disabilities. We have showcased evidence base as well as potential for scaling here and have been honored to receive the Zero Project Award. We are very proud to say here today that the strength of the Indian societies have made us successful in our psychosocial inclusion programs. Individuals and families that are healthy, well, and emotionally resilient contribute to psychosocial ecosystem of their neighborhood. Present-day India is seeing huge positive shifts economically and in development. In our communities, we have seen the impact of mass campaigns like Swachh Bharat Abhiyan, digitalization, road connectivity, availability of public health services, health insurance, education for lifelong learning, skill development, and more recently, campaign on elevating sportsmanship. We have seen tireless initiatives to prepare all regulatory systems, private and public, for national leadership. Self-reliance at the national level resonates with the Bapu Trust, which has practiced self-reliance for well-being at the grassroots since long. How to do this? What is it about the Indian and Asian social systems that encultures inclusion more naturally? A World Health Organization study in the 1970s found that traditional social systems are a big support system for persons with high support needs, including persons with mental health conditions. Families and neighborhoods living simple lives will go that extra mile when educated on disabilities to provide care and support. We enjoy high social capital even today. More frequently than not, there is trust, cooperation, and altruism in informal support networks. With a little bit of moral nudge, exhaustive awareness programs on disability inclusion, and ample availability of social services close to the households, families can support their relatives with disabilities. In low-income and middle-income groups, these double up as core support systems and structures within which individuals do thrive and flourish. Peace, nonviolent and supportive communication, self-care practices, peer and group networks, and resourcing the collective occurs within households and within groups of people who stay together in the same neighborhood. This machinery in context of disability inclusion is naturally occurring, efficient and accountable, native to Asia-Pacific, Africa, and Latin American nations. These systems and practices do need a recognition and a policy boost. Supported by international cooperation policy in India must shift from mental asylum culture left behind our colonizers to more decolonized and indigenous ways of healing and recovery. India has a vast reservoir of practices contained in the capsule of Ayurveda, Yogesh, Unani, Ayurveda, Yoga, Unani, Siddhi, and homeopathy. These must be ingrained into public health systems at all levels, supporting communities and families with the cause of disability inclusion such as personal assistance, support for running support networks could be considered. There are good practices like the Bapu Trust in India and in the Asia-Pacific region as living examples. Like my colleague here said, let's do all we can for building a better world. Thank you.
If I could just conclude very briefly. Thank you, Kavita, for that exposition. We had only time for one of the examples of good work in India. We have more than half a dozen Indian organizations here attending the conference and doing fantastic work. They are all eager to carry their models, their experiences to promote disability inclusion outside India as well. And this year, India is the president of the G20, and our motto is Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam, which basically translates into one world, one family, one future. And if we could, through our diplomacy, succeed in this endeavor, I think we would consider ourselves successful. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. And to elaborate on that, I encourage all of you to come to the Policymaker Forum in the afternoon, where the distinguished Muniraju from Niti Aayog will be also elaborating on India's forward-looking role when it comes to becoming a assistive technology powerhouse and exporting the innovations there as well. We've heard from Australia, we've heard from India. We will now do a rolling diplomacy switch. And first of all, give a warm applause again to all the speakers. And we will now welcome the distinguished ambassador of Israel and of Spain and their respective Zero Project Awardees to the stage. Bear with us as we do this administrative switch.
Thank you. And we'll take this time to review the ABCs. Everybody that wants to practice again, we've got A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H for hiring, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. And we're ready.
Thank you, Kathryn. And now everyone's going to have to spell back thank you to Kathryn. And
Thank you.
Following the path of innovation we've heard from, I would like to take this opportunity to also introduce a dear friend of the Zero Project and Zero Project Ambassador Circle member, Ambassador Mordechai RODGOLD. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. My name is Mordechai RODGOLD, Ambassador of Israel. I have graying hair. I wear a blue suit, white shirt, and blue tie. Dear colleagues, dear friends, we can all be very proud to be members of the Zero Project Ambassador Circle, where for the very first time, for the best of our knowledge, the International Diplomatic Corps anywhere in the world led the groundwork for a new kind of diplomacy, one which we could call social impact diplomacy. The concept is simple. Just as we use the tools of diplomacy and diplomatic missions the world over to promote our country's traditional interests, bilateral and multilateral relations, economic ties, cultural affairs, and beyond, so too can we put the advantages of our profession to use in advancing social impact on a global scale, most certainly when it comes to promoting the rights of people with disabilities. In the context of this conference, perhaps the most logical place to start with social impact diplomacy is government to government. Israel has a population of about 9.5 million citizens, of which 17% are people that see themselves as having some sort of a disability, be it mental or physical. This corresponds to the average numbers in other countries in the world. Israel is proud to have a commissioner for the equal rights of persons with disabilities, today Mr. Dan Rachal, who is also present here at the conference. The Commissioner operates out of our Justice Ministry, whose work was recognized last year by the Zero Project, and our Foreign Ministry is assisting him in meeting with counterparts wherever he travels. Such encounters are an essential part of our social impact diplomacy. They ensure face-to-face exchanges of shared, less recommended, and best practices in critical areas such as policy and implementation. We at Israel's Foreign Ministry not only facilitate when the opportunity presents itself, we actively encourage and work to initiate such activity. Israeli diplomacy makes sure that relevant officials represent us in multilateral fora dealing with the SDGs, particularly here in Vienna, as well as in Geneva and in New York, making sure to promote the ethics of leaving no one behind. This reflects also an essential value of Israeli society, striving to be open and inclusive. We also partner when possible with our Social Affairs Ministry, which leads Israel's grassroots activity for people with disability, both to help them in reaching counterparts in the international area and also to make sure that their excellent work gets recognition on the global stage, such as at this conference this year and in the media. Israel is known worldwide as the startup nation, given its leadership in social and technological innovations. The large Israeli delegation here at this conference gives testimony to our achievements, and Israel being an impact nation, as we call it. And I am delighted to sit next to Efrat STERN from the JDC Israel, whose dedicated work plays a crucial role for inclusion. Especially since the public-private partnership is the essence of activities to promote social impact and equality, it is only natural that our diplomats also work regularly with Israel's robust civil society toward the same ends as our governmental activity, creating partnerships, encouraging shared practices, raising awareness, and enhancing visibility. I'll end my remarks with a word about Israel's foreign ministry. Looking inward, in recent years, we have seen an impressive growth in promoting the rights of people with disabilities in our own house. We continue to move forward in educating our diplomats and local staff, our employees in general, seeking ways to improve accessibility and, of course, integrating people with disabilities in our workforce. I had the privilege in my former position to implement this by myself in the department I was heading. In this context, I am particularly proud both of the work of our internal diversity committee and of the growing number of people with disabilities among our ministry's national service volunteers. I would be happy to share with my colleagues in the diplomatic corps our experience in everything I mentioned here today. And of course, we are eager to learn from others. That, to me, is what social impact diplomacy is all about. Kudos to the Zero Project for encouraging us to further move in this direction. Shalom. Please, Efrat.
Thank you, Ambassador RODGOLD, for your insights and for your work to make positive social impact through diplomacy. So, hello everyone. My name is Efrat STERN, and I'm the director of JDC Israel Unlimited. JDC Israel Unlimited is a partnership between the JDC, the largest international humanitarian Jewish organization, and the Israeli government. And together, we close gaps and maximize independent living for people with disabilities in Israel and around the world. I'm very happy to be here this morning. As a part of where the PowerPoint? Thank you. As a part of international organization, we have connection in over 70 countries. 70 countries around the world. And I see the deep impact of having international goals, learning opportunities, and cooperation. In the field of disabilities, one of the most important guides is the UN Conventions for the Rights of Persons with Disabilities. The CRPD is a tool that clearly defines the rights of all people with disabilities and what we need to do as governments, as societies, as social organizations to make sure these rights are realized. The convention sets and creates common language between countries so the best practices and services are implemented and constructive policies are promoted across the globe. In Israel, in JDC Israel Unlimited, we implemented the standards of the convention, and our program pilots were and are adopted by the government and translated into policy. This common language and shared standard gave us in Israel a starting point or place for social services law for people with disabilities that passed in the Israeli Knesset last June. Our one fundamental right in the CLPD and promoted by the Israeli law is the right of people with disabilities to live independently in the community. 10 years ago, JDC Israel Unlimited developed a program that provided the everyday support for a person with disabilities that wants to live independently in the community. Today, I'm thrilled to say that we are here again to receive the award, this time for our expanded program that makes independent living a possibility for people with even more severe disabilities. And this is exactly an example of how policy creates change in the reality, a good change in the reality of people with disabilities. But we couldn't do this alone. We have built a network of people with disabilities, their families, their communities. We collaborate with organizations in the field, and we partner with the Israeli government to create change. We export and we import information and knowledge to other countries, sharing our work, what we succeed, what doesn't succeed, what are our challenges, or what are our successes. In the past 10 years, as a country, we have made great progress in the inclusion of people with disabilities in society through policy, international cooperation, and changing attitudes. Diplomacy is not a goal or an end for itself. It is a tool to achieve policy. Like here, the Zero Project, everyone is an ambassador for their country. As people engaging in diplomacy and in work to remove barriers for people with disabilities, we must walk the talk, like some of my colleagues here mentioned today, both in diplomacy and in our day-to-day. We have to ask ourselves questions like how many people with disabilities are working in diplomacy, and are diplomatic sessions entirely accessible for all kinds of disabilities? And this value of nothing about us without us applies in times of crisis as well. JDC's work over the past year in Ukraine and in Turkey just in the past 2 weeks has sought to support people with disabilities through times of crisis. Inclusion cannot be a value when things are going well, or not just in these times. On the contrary, it is more important to provide support to people with disabilities when they face crisis. So maybe 3 key takeaways from today. The first one is diplomacy is our tool to creating international benchmark for global change. The knowledge of people with disabilities must inform all decisions, and we must ensure that all action in the diplomatic field must be inclusive. I am very proud to work with the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs and, of course, the Zero Project as our partners in this field. But as important as the UN and programs like the Zero are, the real power of diplomacy rests with all of us here in this room and here in this conference. The connections from this week have the potential to shape national and international policy. I know that I will meet someone, I will reach out for someone totally different from the place that I know or where I come from. I will find something about their approach to inclusivity to take home with me and give them something to take home with them. This is how diplomacy generates change. Thank you very much.
Toda Rabba, Ambassador RODGOLD. Thank you, Efrat, for sharing your experiences and your approaches to inclusive diplomacy. Now, last but certainly not least, I have the distinguished pleasure to welcome another member of the Zero Project Ambassador Circle. Actually, all of the ambassadors you've heard from today are part of the Zero Project Ambassador Circle. An idea we launched here 1 year ago, the idea being a simple one, to have a diplomatic collective centered around disability inclusion, where ambassadors can learn from us, but also learn from each other. And I think you're seeing it by each intervention today, how this is coming to fruition, how this is working, and the joint steps we're taking. And I can tell you that we have also the quantitative data that the interaction with these respective embassies has yielded higher and higher nominations from the respective countries we're working with. This applies to Australia, this applies to India, this applies to Israel, this applies to Spain. We're getting in touch with more organizations and individuals we have never even fathomed or were aware of, and the great work they do. And we're eternally thankful for the time you give us, especially also Ambassador Cristina Fraile. Thank you for being with us. The stage is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting Ferran and I to attend this panel. It's really an honor to be sitting here with you, especially with you, Ferran. Since I am taking the floor, we are taking the floor in the last place, we have the privilege of going from the general principles, which I think all of the general ideas have already been presented. I would like to go a little bit into detail and give you some examples on how diplomacy can help disability inclusion. So I think 4 things are needed to attain real social change and provide a real chance for effective and real inclusion of persons with disabilities. The first is a good legal basis, and we have already heard a lot about the UN Conventions on the right of persons with disabilities and how it has impacted national legislations and international awareness on the importance to include in our societies, in all aspects of our societies, persons with all sorts of disabilities. It has impacted the Spanish legislation as well, and we have adopted, after we became a party to the UN Convention, we have adopted new legislation to enhance and to adapt our laws to what was required by the UN framework. For example, in the diplomatic career, there is an obligation, a legal obligation, to include persons with disabilities in the state examinations to take in persons with disabilities. They need to go through the same process as everybody else with the necessary adaptations. So I'll give you an example. I have a colleague who is a wheelchair user, and what barriers does he encounter when trying to go abroad and represent Spain by being part of an embassy? Well, when picking up the country that he wants to be appointed to, he needs to be aware of the conditions in that country. So he cannot be sent just anywhere in the world, because not every country in the world has adapted buildings, adapted lifts, adapted streets for him to perform his work normally. So by talking openly about these issues in a panel like this, we can create more international awareness about changes that need to be done for our diplomats, also those with disabilities, being able to carry out their job abroad. We need also, second thing, political will. Not only real legal basis, but also the political will to to adopt policy that really have a meaningful impact and meaningful change. In the Ministry for Foreign Affairs in Spain, we have recently created a new position, which is the Ambassador at Large for the rights of persons with disabilities. And by the way, I spoke with him yesterday, and he would be more than willing to attend this conference next year if you invite him.
Yeah, I think so.
He himself has a disability, and he is working on all these issues on how to adapt, for example, our state examinations to take in more diplomats every year. Third thing that we need, financial means. because many of the adaptations that are needed, depend not only on the legal basis and the political will, but also on the money that it costs, to do that. For example, the adaptations in the state examinations to become a diplomat. But one of the most important things, and one of the things that I'm most proud of in Spain, is the social awareness and the extremely rich network of NGOs that we have the privilege of having in Spain, of NGOs that work tirelessly to fill in the gaps of everything that the state or the regions or the local authorities are not able to do. They do it. And this awareness, this social awareness, I think is one of the most important things, also in the sense that when you are trying to overcome the barriers that persons with disabilities must face, I think awareness is the most important thing. We have had, when I was working in human rights in the Ministry for Foreign Affairs, we had a program to send abroad interns. And some of these interns who wanted to work in our, for example, in our permanent mission in Geneva, in human rights bodies, or in New York, had disabilities. And some of them were blind. And we encountered the first barrier, that was the ignorance of our colleagues working in those missions, who were very scared and said, but no, we cannot do this. We can, a person who is blind cannot work here because, you need to read, you need to use computers. And we told them, let us try, and we will show you. And we did send people, blind people, to these missions. And they were, our colleagues, they were absolutely amazed because they realized that they had been wrong, only because they didn't know what people with disabilities are able to do. And in creating this awareness and providing all the support and the counsel that people with disabilities encounter, we have a wonderful example here, which is the Support Girona, the NGO that Ferran Blanco represents, and I would like to give him the floor so that he can explain the wonderful job that they do in Catalonia. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Ferran, I would be a terrible moderator if I were not to give you a friendly reminder to synthesize the wisdom and the innovation of your experience in 5 minutes, to give also the respect to the next session. And I know you'll do a great job, so thank you for sticking within the 5 minutes.
Thank you, Ambassador. Yes, indeed, I am speaking by heart because I have not prepared a speech, but I'm a social worker from a small-scale organization in the northeast of Catalonia in Spain, and we are turning out 20 years this 2023. And hearing the stories of our general director and different important persons that are here from which we collaborate with, I realized that diplomacy can take many forms and shapes, because I can imagine that the origins of our organization with this intersectionality of legislation, policy, and financing, have to be dealing with a lot of this micro-diplomacy and soft diplomacy between the mental health service providers, between employment providers, as a newly created civil society organization. In fact, from 20 years till now, we have been awarded 2 Zero Project Awards. We are very proud of that. And indeed, there is a singularity in Spain, and the richness of the different civil society organizations that provide this type of disability rights advocacy, disability rights, direct intervention from persons with disabilities, had led us to a better stage of the implementation of the UN CRPD in our country, right? We were discussing in previous weeks, with the legislation about the right to vote, about the right to enjoy legal capacity. And we know that the forthcoming policy will deal about independent living, about the institutionalization, involuntary placement, involuntary measures. And we know that this is the way forward. And we know that this is also a long way forward, and with a lot of work to be done. In that sense, I would like to stress that Support Girona the Catalan government also, and the public mental health service provider in Girona has established a cooperation agreement with the World Health Organization to deploy the Quality Rights Initiative in that in Catalonia and in Spain and globally, if we may, to raise social awareness and to train professionals to be more aware of what the UNCRPD means, what are the human rights of persons with psychosocial disabilities or every type of disability. And we are very proud of that. And this is also another example of how diplomacy can work between a small-scale organization, which is Support Girona, and a global organization, which is the World Health Organization, no? And also with the cooperation of the different Catalan government or different autonomic governments in Spain. And I think that diplomacy has a role in that also. Diplomacy has a role at a micro level, at a meso level, and also at a more macro level, no? Because these small-scale initiatives of Support Girona and the network of our stakeholders could be scaled up, could be replicated, could be transferred to other countries, and particularly in Europe and Latin American countries. And I think that as well as we have a lot of way forward to implement fully the UNCRPD, we have a long way forward also in diplomacy, and we need to work on that. And I'm sure that will be the case, because at the end, the goal is to reach a world without barriers, which is kind of the motto also of the Zero Project. Thank you.
Thank you, Ferran. I will take the privilege of the moderator to recap all of this in 30 seconds. We have seen the network. We have seen innovations, be it youth, mental health, independent living, from 4 respective embassies and the awardees today. And I would like to leave you with this. The Harvard professor Joseph Nye in the 1990s coined the term soft power, defined as the ability to shape the preferences of others through appeal and attraction. And I will argue that the leaders and the nation leaders of tomorrow will be those who have baked into their foreign policy and their doing and their strategy disability inclusion. They will be the ones which will show that through dignity, inclusion, and resilience, they will be both the soft and the hard nations which will lead. And I think this is going to become something which will define nations moving forward who embrace disability inclusion and through that gain strength. And I think you've heard today from Australia, India, Israel, and Spain on how that can be done. And I would like to extend my personal thank you to the ambassadors and the Zero Project Awardees for their time. And with that, we will leave the stage and wish you all a fantastic second day at the Zero Project Conference 2023.